Hello and welcome to Forever Sports and how the tables have turned. Very interesting news, and we'll wait for the confirmation when the teams are announced. But France is set to deploy a nuclear squad, in inverted commas, set to become the first international team to deploy a 7-1 split since Rassie first did it a few years ago. And very interested to see what the reaction is going to be because the Springboks had a very tough time when they were naming 7-1 splits, and you had people talking about how dangerous it is for the game and how it's so bad for the future of rugby, and it's manipulating the rules, etc., etc., etc. And Rassie was chastised by a large part of the rugby community for it. And the Springboks are very open about it. They said, well, it's within the laws. They said there's a big risk to it, so it's a risk versus reward type of thing. And they've got to try and find the best 23 or the best combination of 23 players to get results. So they were very, very happy with the 7-1 split, and it definitely, at times, definitely did work. And the question is, you know, is it going to be something that's going to be useful? And this is something we might see a bit more of. But my big question is, what is the reaction going to be? Because you're always going to be like there's always gonna be a strong reaction when you're the first one, and there was. And I think the more the Box did deploy it, the more people started to say, yeah, okay, whatever. It's not too hectic because there is a large risk to it. It didn't always work. Some people are saying, well, it's pointless, for example. But what's gonna be very interesting is if Fabian Galthie does deploy it this weekend, does it start to get normalized? For example, do we start to worry less and less about how big of a deal? So, for example, the 6-2 splits become a very normal thing. We've seen England deploy it recently. We've seen Italy deploy it before. We've seen lots of teams around the world go with a 6-2 split. It's become something that's not that like weird or anything. It's just become part of the game. And it's one of those things, you become a trendsetter, and you kind of become a person who sort of shatters the walls regarding how pens are done. And that's what Rassie and Jacques Niaba did. Now, for example, it's become a bit more normalized. The 7-1 is now kind of viewed as the 6-2 in terms of like, oh, that's a really big thing. Whereas, for example, as a Springbok fan, we just would assume most of the time we're going to see a 6-2 split, maybe sometimes a 5-3 if we've got backline injuries and the likes. So, yeah, before we get to the detail, please do smash like on the video. But basically, what L'Equipe is reporting is that Galtier is set to select 7 forwards this weekend. Apparently, among them, the likes of Julian Marchand, Cyril Bay, George Henry Colombe, Hugo Aradu, as well as Anthony Gelange and Romain Tuafa-Fanua. With Maxime Luchu, apparently the sole backline player, he can cover 9 and 10, and he is said to be the only backline player in that sort of 7-1 split. This is up against Italy, which, I mean, poor Italy. I mean, you look at that French pack anyway, and they're going to probably dominate Italy, and now you have to try to deal with a whole separate one coming on. So, I mean, I think it's is very much they are trying to prove a point. Last year, Italy came very close to beating them, and they end up drawing the game. And I think they need to try and make a statement after losing to England. There's lots to talk about the fact that well, maybe this France team isn't as good as we probably thought, and are they on the down, for example, and so apparently it's a bit of a response to both things. First of all, the England loss, as well as how close it was to Italy last year, where I thought the Italian pack really stood up. Now they're going, okay, well, what can Italy not do? They can't match us physically if we go with 15 forwards. They physically can't. They just don't have the player depth, the player personnel to be able to match a French pack like that, two French packs really. And if you can pull Italy into an absolute sort of slugfest, then you're going to dominate them. If you keep the game open and you're allowed to be very open and with lots of, for example, backline and lots of kicking behind and becomes a very open game, which is not that sort of confrontational, that's where Italy become dangerous. They've got a brilliant counter attack on them. Their defense is pretty solid, but they can only defend for so long, and that kind of becomes the problem for Italy. So I'm very interested to see how it's going to go, and I think it's going to be interesting again to see sort of who features in that 7-1 split, what the reaction is. In terms of Italy, what is the reaction going to be for them, for example? Do they now go with a 6-2 split to try and counter that? We've seen teams like that go before. They're going to say, well, we'll go to a 6-2 split, then the Box go with a 7-1 split, and to try and sort of negate what each of the other team is trying to do. And you kind of get sucked into this sort of, mental mind games type of thing. And not only just from well, how do we contest with the pack, but are we now adapting to them rather than just playing our own game? Are we being drawn into having to do things we don't actually want to simply because other teams are making us change things? And you've always got to sort of weigh up the opportunity or the big sort of conundrum of playing your own game versus adapting to the opposition. How much do you focus on yourselves versus who you're playing against? So it all comes to a nice mind games. I like it. I think this is good for rugby. I think innovation is good for rugby. I think other teams trying things will go badly, things will go well, and you'll start to understand how the 7-1 can be manipulated, can be used, can be a problem, can be an advantage. I think the more we start to really push the boundaries of what laws remain, it more becomes interesting to watch. We want to see the boundaries of laws being pushed so that we kind of understand what the potential shortfalls are. And we are very much going through a lot of changes when it comes to rugby. And I think that we need to start seeing more reform. And yes, there's a lot of laws changed at the moment. I don't say we need to have more law changes, but maybe we need to sort of start adapting laws further to try and negate certain aspects of the rugby which is creeping in, and to try and focus on other aspects which we really like. So stop getting rid of the scrum, for example, but how can we sort of look to find out what do we really want to watch, what do we really want to have, and how do we make sure that's protected whilst trying to improve the game, as well as simplify the game. I think the biggest thing about rugby is you've got to simplify it at the moment. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.